Hi there, this is Carl Irwin, the Common Magician, with one more look at these stacked decks that we've been talking about, just to try to make one more sell on this idea and talk a little bit about how I view this and how I've kind of conformed this to, over the past few days, conformed it to the way I use stacked decks. And I have to admit, I don't do stacked deck magic very often, but I do have a couple of effects that I like to carry for, and one of them being the going home effect that I shared last week. And it'd be good to have an arrangement where I could do that effect where things look good, and I could also manage calculations to use it for its stack for other occasions, not just that one effect. So that's what kind of got me thinking about this. But I want to just show you a few things, and I want to give you the unfair view. And when I say the unfair view, I mean this is more of an appearance, more of a look at the spread of cards than any spectator should ever get in a performance. And I think, as I've talked about in the last few videos, at least at certain portions of the videos, I've talked about these stacks that are created that are intended to look random upon extensive viewing. I fail to see the need for that, apart from handing the deck out for examination or to fool magicians who otherwise know the stacks that are out there. And even that doesn't work, because once magicians know the stacks, well, then they recognize the stacks. What good is it then? Then you come up with another one, or switch, or use a more obscure one that magicians are less aware of or have forgotten about, that are less popular. I mean, I really don't know where that game ends. But I took some photographs here, and I'm just going to scroll through them and discuss what's going on, just to give you a realistic sense of what these spreads look like in fair viewing, and actually more than fair viewing, because again, this is the unfair vantage point. This is not really how people would see cards. They wouldn't look at the spread for this long with the ability to analyze it directly. They would be talked to, they would be asked questions, there would be things going on that are part of the interaction. And they wouldn't necessarily have opportunity to analyze every aspect of it. So first, I just want to point this out. What you're looking at, this here is a shuffled deck. This is a shuffled deck spread. So I just shuffled the cards and then I laid them down, jokers included. You can see a number of things if you wanted to make very general observations. I contend that people can only make general observations when looking at a shuffled deck. They're never permitted to make specific observations. And even if they would happen upon a detailed observation, they would never have the vantage point to compare that detail against anything else. It's just not enough time, view, and capability to do that. I think I've mentioned this before. My father one time lost a hubcap on the family sedan when I was a kid. And he went out to Walmart and he bought some cheap hubcaps, the plastic kind that they make that are kind of chrome looking, or they're sprayed metal, sort of look. And I noted that he replaced the one that he lost and the one on the same side. So he replaced two hubcaps. He took the remaining one that he had off and then he replaced the one that was missing, but only on the one side. And then I noted that he did not change them on the other side. He kept the original hubcaps on the other side. And I asked him about this, and his response was really funny, and interesting and true. He said, nobody can ever see both sides of the car. I only noted it because I saw that two of the new hubcaps were still sitting in the box, over in the corner of the garage. It's the only reason why I noticed it. But he made the point. He said, nobody can ever see both sides of the car. There's no need to replace two good hubcaps on the far side of the car. I mean, talk about cheap, but he had a good frugal point there, right? That you can't see everything all at one time. And so it goes with this concept of memorized decks or stacked decks. you cannot see everything all at one time, and no one should ever be given the vantage point to see everything all at one time for any amount of time by which they would be able to analyze what's going on. So that is the premise that I have here. And I think you'd have to come up with a reason to cover all of the bases and have a stack that looks absolutely random throughout upon extensive analysis with zero pattern, other than to fool magicians or to hide the pattern from magicians who otherwise would be aware. So apart from that, I just don't see the reason. So here we have a stack that is not a stack, it's truly shuffled. So the big things you notice, there's clumps of red and black. And that may be all that anybody gets to notice, right? As you dig a little deeper, you'll see that there's not only clumps of red and black, but there's seems to be unassociated values. That's a slightly deeper layer, unassociated values. And I contend, again, that one would note that there's clumps of red and black, and that's really the best that they're going to get, looking at a spread in a fair situation, in a realistic environment. But if you do take that extra second, you would notice that there's unrelated values. If you go a little bit deeper than that, you might notice that in those clumps there is some mixture of suits and some clumps of suits. So there are clumps of suits, but throughout the deck there is a mixture of suits. You don't have suits all clumped up in one place in one running area. Even though I've got a huge stack of red, there's a clump of diamonds here, a clump of hearts over here. There's a 3 in a row of diamonds, right? Over here I've got 3 clubs in a row. I've got clumps of suits that are together, 3 spades that are in a row. If you dig deeper than that, and by the way, at this point, we are way beyond fair viewing. I mean, we're way beyond fair viewing at this point to notice anything more. You might, if you happen to gaze upon a spot where you have a couple of cards that are the same value next to each other. So it just so happens that when this got shuffled, the 2 jokers ended up next to each other near the center. Total happenstance. I have 2 kings that are nearby. They're not right next to each other, but they are nearby. Let's see, do I have any others? And I actually have to look for it, right? So this is just case in point. I have to look through this to see if I can spot any other places where I have like values. You'd have to happen upon it. I'll just note I have 3, 6, 9 in clubs over here, and I'll note that this was shuffled significantly. This was shuffled several different ways, several different times, over and over and over. And yet there's this clump 3, 6, 9 of divided by, separated by values of 3 in the same suit. And it wasn't necessarily arranged that way ahead of time or before it was shuffled. And it's not like these stuck together. It's just these things happen, right, where you see these mathematical properties. It's like finding a picture of the Virgin Mary in the burn pattern of your toast. You can find anything anywhere if you really want to, and make something of it. Here we've got a couple of 10s that are near each other. I don't really see too many other pairs. I have another shuffled deck we'll look at later on where you see a lot more pairs together. But I mean, that's really it. So properties of a really truly shuffled deck. That's it. Clumps of red and black, mixture of suits, clumps of suits, unrelated values. Perhaps you might spot some like values nearby or adjacent to each other. And that's, beyond that, I don't know really what there is more to analyze about it. And again, this is completely not fair viewing. So, next picture. This is another deck of cards that appears to be shuffled, but it is actually in stack. It's actually in a stack, and not only is it in a stack, it's in a very it's not a shuffled stack. It's hardly shuffled. Now there's one element going on here to disguise a little bit about what's going on, but otherwise, if you look at this, you'll see clumps of red, clumps of black. You'll see non-related values, and that's as far as people go. This is actually in that stack that we were talking about. This is in inverted, I'm going to call it in inverted running order. So inverted running order. It's in running order, but it's inverted. And the one thing that's different about this, so there's actually two things that are different about it, is that I have this in a suit grouping that I like to remember for my stacks that I have created. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, okay? So you would notice if you look deeper and deeper that there are groups of hearts and spades that are a little bit longer running in certain areas. Big chunk of diamonds over here. In general, there's diamonds on this side. In general, there's spades on this side. In general, there's clubs and hearts kind of in the middle. But there is yet still a couple things that break up that pattern. Notice you don't see a club on this side until you get this far. But I'm having to point this out to you and give some extensive review. Now, let's talk about the values for a moment, right? Starting right here at the 4, 6, 8, 10, queen. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, queen. 2, 4, 6, 8, to go this way, starting at the ace. Ace, 3, 5, 7, 9, jack, king. Ace, some jokers in the way, 3, 5, 7, 9, jack, king. You can see this is literally just inverted running order. They're in sequence, apart from the suits. But I have to point this out, right? I'm sure some egghead out there is going to say, oh, I noticed that right away. Well, good for you, but it's just not, it's not, given the context of our discussion, you may know what to look for, or this may be on your mind. But otherwise, even after extensive viewing, this is not apparently in order. And this is about as least mixed as you can get. It's less mixed than Cy Stebbins. Right. Now, I do have, again, a little bit more camouflage going on with the suits, but we'll examine what this could look like without that even at the end. Okay, so this is that running. Now, the other thing that I have going on is I have it in -3. So I took the 3 cards from the top and I did move them to the bottom for calculation purposes, as I talked about a few videos ago, when using something like this, a way that you could handle it that would give you a little bit more camouflage and help you to do simpler calculations right out of the box without having to shift cards around and without having to memorize the order of the entire thing. Okay, so let's see. Next thing. Here's some more. What I have here is 3 different types of orders, right? In the center, this is a shuffled deck. And I'm going to keep this, we'll use this shuffled deck for the rest of the examples here going forward. And in this shuffled deck, you can see that there are some 8s over here. There's a couple of 9s together over here, a couple of 6s right next to that, a couple of 5s. It's actually, in this, again, this was shuffled over and over and over and over again in many, many different ways, and it did not come from a particular order. It was already shuffled coming out of the box. So it's just, these are ordinary patterns that show up. And again, you can make something of it if you want to, but this really is just quite ordinary. You have clumps of black, clumps of red, some suits that run, some suits that are every other in a couple places. You have court cards together, court cards separate. You have, unrelated values, and you have related values. There's a lot of mixture in there because it is truly randomized. This is Cy Stebbins. So this is Cy Stebbins. Now, the automatic thing that you would note about Cy Stebbins is the way that the 4-suit rotation pops out. And that points to red-black. But you do see black and red mixed up, and you do see unrelated values throughout. And I think there's a way to present this that hides the rest of the concern, which is the black-red and the rotation of suits. But this is a very popular stack, and I contend that you should be able to use this, Cy Stebbins, the basic Cy Stebbins stack, and use it as a shuffled deck that appears shuffled on the table. I think that you can get away with this. I see no reason why you can't, given truly fair viewing, which is not very long and involves interaction with the spectator. Underneath that, I have inverted running order. This is the inverted running order. And you can see this is without mixing up the suit group. So it is red-black. You can see I've got hearts and spades on this side. I've got clubs and diamonds in the middle. And I've got hearts and spades over here running red-black. Now, there is red, there is black. They are mixed. There seems to be unrelated values together, even when you do have a run of related values, 6, 7, 8. Like my father and his vehicle and the hubcaps, it's not that you would notice 6, 7, 8 everywhere it shows up, even though it shows up 4 times. You don't really get a chance ever to see all of it unless you are given the opportunity of analysis. And no spectator should be given the opportunity of analysis. That's my point. Okay, so this is hardly mixed at all. This is running order with the blacks reversed and then inserted back in. It's not really farrowed because you have an you have an uneven grouping of odds versus evens, right? You can see that you have kings and aces are together. So you can't really just reverse it and then farrow to get this. You'd have to actually stack it because of those particular issues in there. Or you'd have to stack it outside of odds versus evens because of that inequity between the two groups. There's more odd numbers than there are evens. But this is hardly mixed up, yet it gets you really almost to the same place as Cy Stebbins on most issues, apart from the large swath of similar suits. Now, I will notice that, there are all hearts and spades over here, but it's not all of the hearts and spades. It's not like there's a break in the middle. You don't have to go very far until you run into a club and a diamond. If you took a few of these cards and moved them to the bottom and just spread near the top, shallow, for the first half, you'd have a very deceptive appearance, right? Or if you spread even this the way it is fairly on the table with a slight jaggedness to it, or an uneven spread to it, it would be perfectly camouflaged, I think, to be passable as a mixed shuffled deck. Okay, next one. As you can see here, I've labeled Cy Stebbins at the top. Just get one more view. Shuffled, truly shuffled in the middle to compare, and then inverted running stack. And this is what we've been talking about over the last few videos. And I've suggested that this actually could be a stack that you use for a number of high-quality effects. And I also do believe, as I demonstrated, that you could take this stack as it is and deal them face up when the focus is not on knowing the order of the cards, but rather on looking for a particular card in the deck that's been named or one of interest that's known. I think you could easily deal this face up and nobody would really be aware of what is in order. Again, going back to Dad's old caprice, you don't see all of it all at one time. You only see a little bit at a time. And the moment that you lay down a card and cover it up with another card, it has been forgotten. The mind does not really recall things that it isn't looking for, and it certainly can't recall things not only that it's not looking for, but also that have not been seen and have been seen briefly and have been covered up and forgotten because of that. So there is that as well. Here's 4 groups of stacks. Now here, what I have is I have the stacks that I use. There's 2 that I have taught and have used for a long time. One of these is the same modified inverted stack, and then one of them is absolutely shuffled, truly shuffled. And I think that you would note at first glance, these all look shuffled, even though 2 of these are in very clear order. I should say really only one of them is in very clear order numerically in terms of value. The other 2 are not in obvious order because you don't know my order. But that's the only reason why you don't know. If this was some other order that is known by magicians, you would identify it quickly. So first of all, let's go up here. The top one, this is my common stack. This is my common stack. This is a simplified version of it. And I'll just note, if you do a deep dive in this, what do you see? You see some grouped up cards that are the same values nearby. You see a place over here where you see a few values that are nearby each other. You see clumps of suits, but you also see a dispersion of suits where you have a run of blacks, but it's not all clubs, right? You don't go too far before a spade pops up. You have a run of hearts over here, but you see clubs and diamonds nearby. You've got globs of spades over here, but you also see a diamond and hearts in between. Face cards are dispersed, except for a couple areas where they're not, where they might be near each other. This looks shuffled. I mean, but however, if you know what's going on, this is a 10-card sequence rather than a 13 card. So if you look through this, every 10 cards, you have Jack 5, 8, 4, 2, 9, 7, King 6, and then Ace at the top. And if I go to the next place where this happens, the only difference is that the Ace is at the beginning, but it's Jack 5, 8, 4, 2, 9, 7, King 6. And then it starts over again. Ace, Jack 5, 8, 4, 2, 9, 7, King 6, and then it starts over again, and then there's an outlier over here. So this is actually designed to know cards, card for position by value and suit in tens positions. And there's one tens position over here that has outlier cards that I use for a particular effect that I can do for me. You can actually do the Jonah and the Whale gambling using this group right here plus an ace on either side. We'll give you enough cards for that. But I know all of these card for position, and I teach this on my Penguin product, the Common Stack. This is the one that I teach. This is the simplified variation of it, the one that I have actually come to carry most. I teach a slightly more complex one, but I came to the conclusion it doesn't need to be that complex, so I teach this one as well. This is extremely simple. And I suggest that you could learn this once you know the basic rules by which it operates. The rules actually point to the values directly, so you don't really have to memorize a lot of association. The values really are derived from values that they represent in number and in form. So I think you could learn this literally within a half hour, and you would know it well, very well. I don't think it would take very much time for anybody to learn this, and you would know it card for position. So, and this looks quite mixed. I mean, I think you have a hard time saying that there's patterns in this that would be noticed in better than fair viewing, even from the 36,000 foot point of view, the satellite point of view where you can see everything all at once, which nobody ever really gets that. I think you'd have a hard time identifying that this is mixed. But I say you don't even need that, right? Let's jump down here. This is my common stack, but it's tetradistic. This is the tetradistic. In fact, let me just put the labels on. This is the tetradistic common stack. And you can see here that it is the same sequence. The first few cards, you'll see it follows the same sequence, but I run it through 13 rather than through 10. So I have Jack 5, 8, 4, 2, 9, 7, King 6, Ace, 10, Queen 3, and then it starts over. Jack 5, 8, 4. Now these do not relate adjacently mathematically like Stebbins. It's an order that you have to memorize. But the order that you memorize is stupid easy to memorize because, again, these values point to themselves. And I teach this on the channel. A long time ago, I taught this sequence or a variation of it. Jack is 1, 5 is 2 because 5 and 2 are inverted figures. 8 is 3 because 8 is 2 3s that are put together. And some of these properties actually exist in other stacks that are out there too. 4 is in its place. 2 is 5. 5 and 2 switch places because 2 is just an inverted figure of 5. 6 is 9. 9 is in the 6th place because 6 and 9 are the same figure, but they're inverted. 7 is in its place. So far, we have items that look like the things that they actually are, or they're actually in place. Obviously, Jack can easily stand in for 1. King is 8. This is the first one you run into that actually doesn't necessarily look like what it is, but I contend it does. King looks like an 8. If you were to close off the top and the bottom, that would be an 8. So rather than put 3 in here, I reserved 3 for 13. Okay, so this is 8. 9 is 6. 6 and 9 trade places. Ace is 10. I just memorized that I put the ace in the tens position. 10 is in 11. It's a 2-digit number with a 1 in it. I put that in the 11th position. Queen is in its own place. 3 is in 13. And then that's the sequence. So a lot of these figures actually represent what they really are. Either they stand in their real place or they represent the figure and it's just an inversion of the figure that they represent. Now, as far as the order of everything, all three of these stacks relate in terms of suits. For me, I have all spades in this first group, except for the 4 and the 7. The 4 and the 7 are what I call the related off-color suit. So I put spades and hearts together. Spades and hearts are very similar. And then I put diamonds and clubs together because they're entirely different. So I just replace in each group the 4s and the 7s with the related off-color suit. And that's something I memorize. When I get to 4 and 7 in the first quarter, it will be the related off-color suit. Okay. Then I have for the picture cards in each group is the off-color unrelated suit. So in this case, the Jack, Queen, and King in this group is going to be diamonds. Off-color unrelated. Go to the next group. Off-color unrelated for the court cards. In this case, it's going to be the hearts group. Most of the cards are the hearts here, but the courts are going to be the off-color unrelated, which would be the clubs. Off-color black, unrelated, clubs in this case against hearts, right? And then we have in here the off-color related for 4 and 7, which is the spades. So you can see just in the first half, it's mostly hearts and spades, but there's a mixture of diamonds and clubs in there. And if I look at the second half, it's mostly diamonds and clubs, but there's a mixture of spades and hearts. This would not necessarily be noticed until I point it out. It's not something you get just by looking, okay? Certainly not under fair viewing. Now, from the 36,000 point of view and a lot of analysis, you might notice that there's a clump of clubs over here and then a clump of spades over here, and that they happen to be the exact same thing, right? You might notice that, but you don't ever get that view. I take you back to Dad's old Caprice wagon. It doesn't, it doesn't work that way. You don't see both sides of the car at the same time. You just never get that point of view. You can absolutely deal through this face up, and nobody would ever, a magician would never in a million years understand that there was a sequence to this. They just wouldn't get it, okay? And this is a really solid, if you want a tetradistic stack that's incredibly easy to remember by sequence and by suit, and by value sequence, I posit this one, right? Down here, this is a shuffled deck for example. And I already discussed all the properties in there. And the last one, this is the common inverted stack. So this is the inverted running stack, but it's my variation of it. And what I did is I just applied my logic for suits to this. So rather than put it spades versus diamonds over here, and spades versus diamonds over here like it would be in new deck order, I just put it in my order, which is spades, mostly spades over here, mostly hearts, mostly clubs, mostly diamonds. And I did very much the same thing again. Whenever I have a 4 and a 7, I use the related off color. And for the court cards, I use the unrelated off color. Other than that, it's all spades. But it's in inverted order. And I posit that you could spread this out in front of someone, and again, you might notice that there's a big run of hearts here, and you might notice there's a big run of diamonds, but you never really get a chance to process that possibility. Those things happen in reality. There's unrelated values all the way through, and there's clumps of black and red. That's about all the deeper you get to go. So for as much as this is in order, it's highly out of order in terms of the perception of what a shuffled deck looks like. Now I have this rotated off again. I took the top 3 cards from over here and I moved them to the bottom. If these cards were sitting up here, it would really break up that spade run quite a bit. But I moved them to the bottom on purpose so that I can do simple calculations, as I discussed in a previous video. And this is something that I'm going to probably carry around for a while and play around with and do my normal mem deck tricks. I only do a handful of tricks with a mem deck. But I'll probably do them with this, plus my going home effect, which I need to have a stack like this for. And to do that, I would just need to cycle these 3 cards around. And now I don't actually have to shift anything. For going home, the way I teach it on the Penguin download is I teach that the ace and 7, you need to do a cut of 6 cards to get to it. But in this situation, I wouldn't even need to do that. I'm covered every which way. I just have to know the suit that I'm running into as I count through the cards, which is easy for me because I'm using my common stack suit associations, something that I know well. I made it, right, for myself. So these are the common brand of stacks in these three different varieties against a shuffled deck. And again, I think they're really, really accessible, super, super accessible. I firmly believe if you go through the teaching and I explain the rationale for this, I say for a shuffled looking deck, I think this is the easiest to memorize and recall permanently. Now, you can't stack it from new deck order if you ever actually need to do that. Very few people, I think a lot of magicians look to be able to do that, but never actually have to do it. That's just my perception of it. You'd have to stack this ahead, but I think this is one that you will not forget. You'll know it, and you'll know it fast, and you'll know it card for position, and there's not really algorithms you have to run through. You just know these things. You'll know what they are. The only memorization you really need to commit to in terms of brute force memorization and rote memorization is this sequence of 9 cards right here with the queens, 3s, and 10s. You have to memorize these. And the one thing I did is I grouped them in suit together so that they're easy. Just let me count through this. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 13, 14, 15. 16, 17. 16, 17. And then 18, 19. So you can see how they're grouped together by suits just for the ease of memorization. And I group them together because cards show up that way. It's okay to have them grouped together like that in terms of suit. You don't have to have everything as mixed up as possible. Going on. These are fair viewing. I'm going to give you 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's talk about what they are. This is a shuffled deck. Fairly viewed. This is what you should be doing when you're showing cards shuffled. Spread them, give them an uneven spread. Say the cards are shuffled. Pick them up. Less than 5 seconds, 5 seconds max. You can show it, you can wave your hand over it and demonstrate, okay? This is a shuffled deck. It's actually the same shuffled deck that we were looking at over here. This is the exact same sequence that we had before, okay? Those are the properties of shuffled deck. This is also a shuffled deck, except that it's not. This is actually my running variation of the inverted common stack. It's the inverted running stack, but using my suit groupings. It's going to take you a while to see it. I mean, take a look at it and process, and then you understand. This is in inverted order with an offset of 3. I've got 3 cards down at the bottom that I took from the top. But otherwise, this is more than fair viewing. I gave you the 5 seconds you deserve, and I'm giving you a lot more now. And I challenge that you would find responsible patterns going on in here that would help whatever effect that I'm doing. And just for the sake of argument, this is inverted running order, period. So this is black-red with a clear separation, right? And I think if you took the 5-second kind of fair viewing, you wouldn't necessarily notice. I mean, here's a long run of black-red, black-red, black-red of spades and hearts down here. And this is without the offset. This is just plain Jane inverted running order, okay? You get those few seconds, and that's it. And I contend... I submit that you could use this stack just the way it is and do a lot of magic. 4 magicians even in the appropriate circumstances. And I even believe that you could probably deal through this. Because of the nature of dealing through that I talked about, I don't think it would be very apparent to anybody that there's an order to this because of the way people perceive cards. I remember pointing out a magician on a big television show doing a trick back in the early 2000s. It was just a killer of a trick, killer of an effect. And dealing the cards face up and then looking at the comment section on YouTube about how this trick was accomplished. And someone pointed out to everybody that they were using a stack, and it was a stack that not many people used. But that person had to know about that stack to recognize it. This would be like that. You have to have information to spot it in a dealing kind of scenario where you wouldn't see all the cards, you would only see some of the cards being dealt in dealing for an effect. You'd have to have some insight as to what to look for in order to recognize that it's there. And I think that's even true even for a stack that's as unmixed up as this one is. So, there you go. Shuffled, common running, inverted running. Shuffled, common inverted running order. Those are the ones that we've been talking about, and then these other ones here that I use for myself and recommend you to investigate if you want to learn something quickly and remember it. I recommend these. And for the common tetradistic one, you can do a lot of the Cy-Stebbins stuff that you normally do with this one, and you get away from that black-red issue. Anything that doesn't depend on the rotation of suits, some Cy-Stebbins magic depends on that rotation of suits, so obviously you wouldn't be able to do that. But you can Pharaoh shuffle this twice, and you would end up with all values together with all 4 suits, right? And then here we have the more common Cy-Stebbins as it is. I see no reason why you shouldn't be able to spread this out in front of people in this kind of way and not use Cy-Stebbins and absolutely get away with it, even in front of magicians. I mean, really. I just don't see a reason why you wouldn't be able to do that under real, honest-to-goodness, fair viewing in a real context. In a real moment. So anyway, good luck with those thoughts. I haven't decided. I got to see if I can put and really make a polished presentation of it. But I may try to group these 3 things up. I have to play with this last one for some time here over the coming weeks and see what I think about this as something that I would sell. But I may end up kind of compiling these together. I mean, if you subscribe to my channel, you always get almost everything I do for free, right? From learning here. But I may try to put together some in-depth teaching on these 3 things and package them together for a download. I don't know. We'll see. But I've got so many projects that I've had in mind that I haven't completed, like so many other people that do projects. But this is another one I'm considering and thinking about, putting these 3 things together because they have relationship to each other, these 2 in particular. So anyway, good luck with that. I hope you see my point, and I hope I've convinced you to maybe test this, take this, at least maybe this very bare bones inverted stack for a test drive and try it out on people and see what you think for all the properties that it has. I just don't see a reason not to use it. There's too much power in there with so little need for camouflage to, I think, not give it a try. And remember, you don't have to worry about being busted, because that's what we've been talking about. So go ahead and give it a try, see if you get busted, and let me know how it works out. Good luck with that. Happy magicking.